AJ Holmes Jr. is not the flashiest defensive tackle in the class, but when you watch the tape, you see a grown man, interior anchor, who stops the run, pushes the pocket, wins with leverage, and gives you trustworthy snaps every week. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Draft Yoda, where we're dad-driven and prospect-focused. Today we're breaking down Texas Tech defensive tackle AJ Holmes Jr., currently holding an 8.98 out of 10, making him my number 56 prospect on the board, and my defensive tackle number 7 coming into this college football season. This is one of those evaluations where the player is not built on mystery. It's not a traits-only projection. It's not a maybe one day type of defensive tackle. AJ Holmes is a real dude and has real tape to prove it. Real production, real run defense, real pass rush growth, and real every down value. In 2025, piled up 37 quarterback pressures, 5 sacks, 23 run stops, 4 batted passes, a forced fumble, and did it across 564 snaps in 14 games in one of the biggest fronts in the Big 12. And that matters because defensive tackle is not always about the highlight. Sometimes it's about what you can hold up, whether you can hold up snap after snap. Can you anchor a defense? Can you reset a line of scrimmage? And can you win the run rep first and still give pressure on passing downs? And that, ladies and gentlemen, is AJ Holmes Jr. to a T. Let's get into it. AJ Holmes Jr. came out of Westfield High School in Houston, Texas, named District 14 6A MVP, and signed the Houston Cougars as a 3-star recruit. He was a developmental player. He had to build the body. He had to build the technique. He had to build the resume. And at Houston, it's exactly what he did. Over three seasons, Holmes kept improving. Junior year in 2024, posted 40 tackles, 8.5 tackles for loss, and 2 sacks. And that was the season that showed he was ready for a bigger stage. He was not just a space eater. He had become a disruptive interior defender. And once he entered the transfer portal, Texas Tech saw what he was and came calling quick. Landing with Texas Tech and joined a heavily funded defensive line. That matters. Texas Tech's not just looking for bodies. They were building a serious front. They wanted size, experience, and physicality. And they wanted players who could help them win today. And AJ Holmes fit that to a T. When injury opened the door, he moved into a starting role, and he got an opportunity, and the production followed him to Lubbock. And some transfers produce at one stop and then disappear when the competition or role changes. Not AJ. He carried the game with him. The run defense translated, the power translated, the pocket push translated, and by the end of 2025, he was one of the most productive interior defenders in the Big 12. 2025 is the reason AJ Holmes Jr. is on the board. Across 14 games, 37 quarterback pressures, 5 sacks, 23 run stops, a forced fumble, and batted 4 passes at the line of scrimmage, made first team All-American honors, second team All Big 12. That's a hell of a season. And what I like most is the production came in both phases. He was not just a run stopper. He was not just a pass rush specialist. He was not just a rotational nose tackle. He gave Texas Tech a real interior presence. And he could hold the point, he could reset the line, and he could win with leverage. And he can push the pocket. What makes him special to me? The first thing that stands out is the run defense. It's the foundation of his game. He ranks near the top of the position against the run. And when you watch him, it makes sense. He plays with leverage. He gets his hands inside quickly. He can reset a line of scrimmage against single blocks, and he can hold the gap. He does not get washed out easily. And when teams try to double him, he can absorb contact without losing gap integrity. That is the kind of player defensive coordinators trust, because great run defenses inside, when it's in the inside of the defensive line, changes everything for them. It keeps linebackers clean. It forces backs to redirect. It makes a second and long, a third and long possible. And it allows defenses to stay balanced. Second thing I really like about him is the anchor. Holmes is the kind of interior defender who can hold the point. That matters because not every defensive tackle with pass rush production can actually live in the run game. Some guys are quick but light. Some guys shoot gaps but get displaced. Some guys create flash plays but give up movement when teams run at them. Holmes doesn't do that. He can sit. He can sit down. He can handle the pressure. He can handle the power. He can fight pressure. He can stay square. And he can keep the defense structurally sound for his gap and his responsibilities. He's not just making plays for himself. He's helping the entire front function properly. He's not just a run defender, though, and that's one of the other things I love about him is the pass rush growth. 5 sacks and 37 pressures from the interior is real disruption. That is what lifts him above being just a run-stopping tackle. Interior pressure is super valuable. When pressure comes from the middle, quarterbacks cannot simply step up. The pocket collapses in their face, and the timing of the play gets sped up. Look at the NFL and look at some of the more dominant defenses that we've seen recently. I'll use the Rams, for instance, when Aaron Donald was there. When he's applying pressure up the middle, quarterbacks are off rhythm. Quarterbacks are forced to extend. Things kind of just disrupt for the entire offense. And that's what interior pressure brings. If you look at the Kansas game, 2 sacks, 8 pressures total is a dominant interior defensive lineman performance. It's not just solid. It was him wrecking that game. And a defensive tackle that creates 8 pressures is an offense's biggest worry and a huge problem for any quarterback. Guards fear. Centers have to pull to help. You can't just leave him one-on-one. And that changes protection plans. And changing protection plans can disrupt the rhythm of an offense in general. The strip sack against BYU in the Big 12 championship game is another key moment, because sacks are good, but sacks that knock the ball loose are game-changing. It's the type of play that flips momentum. It's the type of play that wins championships. And when a defensive tackle is the one creating it, that gives the defense a different level of juice. Holmes is not just a pure stat sheet guy. He made impact plays in meaningful spots, and that matters greatly in his evaluation. Also want to touch in on the batted passes. Not every interior rush gets home. Sometimes the quarterback gets the ball out. Sometimes the guard catches the rush. Sometimes the protection wins. But defensive tackles who can stay effective even without getting the rush or winning that rep matter. It shows awareness. It shows timing. It shows he understands how to stay involved when the rush stalls. And for an interior defender, that is extremely valuable. If you can't get to the quarterback, take away throwing lanes, and that is exactly what AJ Holmes Jr. does. Nobody's perfect. I've said in every single one, nobody's perfect. They'll never all, and nobody will ever be perfect. First thing I'd like to see him improve is the tackle finish. He missed 4 tackles, and that's not a massive number, um, but for a player who wins with strength and leverage, you want to see the tackle finish to be as automatic as possible. When Holmes gets into the backfield, he needs to finish. When he gets his hands on a running back, he needs to end the play. When he gets a quarterback in the pocket, he needs to bring them down. It's not a red flag. It's something he needs to clean up. But when you're talking about, a defensive tackle in going into the NFL, it's something they're going to look at. Another concern is the time, speed, and range. He's very average time, speed, and that limits the range. He's not a defensive tackle who's going to consistently chase down players from behind. He's not going to chase them on the backside. He's not going to make a ton of plays outside of the tackle box, and that's okay. It's not his role. That's not going to define his projection. It's not going to, you're not drafting him to make tackles 20 yards downfield. You're drafting him to win inside, to hold gaps, to push the pocket, and to stop the run. Just understand that the total side of his package of being able to chase down defenders isn't there. One of the other things that I'd like to see him work on is the pass rush variety. He wins with power more than, varied hand plan. When the bull rush works, he's a problem. When he wins with leverage early, he can push the pocket. But when the bull rush stalls, he needs more answers. He needs the next step. He needs a counter. Can he win with the club? Can he win with crossface? Can he swipe and clear? Can he, chain multiple moves together? That's what separates, productive college defensive tackles to consistent NFL interior pressure. And it's the power. The power is the foundation. The counters are what is the difference between defensive tackle 7 and defensive tackle 3. It's as simple as that. Can he rise? Yes, but I need to see more from him this season. And going into 2026, you've already proven a lot. Your run defense is already good enough. Your anchor is already there. Your hands are already strong. Your motor is visible. Now the question is whether the pressure production keeps climbing. Can he add more pass rush versatility? Keep the sack production in the 5 to 7 range and continue dominating against the run and watch him climb from defensive tackle 7 into the higher ranks. And that's what's key. If Holmes is only a run defender, that value is limited. But if he's a run defender that also can give you 30 plus pressures a year, that's a starting caliber defensive tackle. It's as simple as that. Currently he's holding an 8.89 out of 10, making him my number 56 overall prospect and defensive tackle number 7. He's a physical anchor with high value run defense, quick hands, strong leverage, real pocket push, and enough pass rush production to project that there's more than just a run stopper here. The concerns are manageable. You got to be able to finish the tackles a little bit better. The range is limited because of your speed. And the pass rush plan still needs to lean less on the heavy power early. I need to see those combinations. I need to see a little bit of a changeup, a counter. But the core is strong. AJ Holmes Jr. is the kind of interior defender who helps you build a real run front and still gives you some pressure on the inside. And that player has value in the NFL. But that's my board. What do you think about AJ Holmes Jr.? Is he one of the safest defensive tackles going into this college season for next year's draft? Do you think he's higher than defensive tackle 7? How much value does a defensive tackle have that is good against the run and can still generate pressure. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you've liked this film, it's built on data and analytics. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. So we're going to keep putting in the work. Our goal is to have over 100 prospects before college football kicks off. As always, I'm Draft Yoda, Bill Workman, your favorite draft nerd's favorite draft nerd, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.